When I was an undergraduate philosophy student, I spent a very brief period impressed with the scholastic method of Thomas Aquinas and the pseudo-geometric method of Spinoza. These were methods that assured us that given the correct axioms, the correct definitions, the correct starting points, and following a method resting on the rigorous use of logic, one would certainly arrive at truth. It didn't take long for me to become disillusioned with this manner of doing philosophy. I wondered, how did we know an axiom or definition was correct? Why was it that so many philosophers could use the same methods for hundreds of years and still fail to find universally convincing answers? These systematic methods started to seem much weaker than they first appeared. I'm reminded of something Nietzsche said in Twilight of the Idols: "I mistrust all systematizers and avoid them. The will to a system is a lack of integrity." American philosopher Rick Roderick put it this way: most philosophers begin by ensuring their knowledge with some kind of method or fiat. They begin in a way by assuring you they won't fall into error. It's an obsession with being right all the time. The phenomenologists, like Husserl, Heidegger, Sartre, and others, had a radically different way of doing philosophy. Speaking of Heidegger, Roderick says, Heidegger believed that this fear of falling into error is error itself, so he does something very odd for a philosopher. He begins by beginning. In other words, he starts writing. What he wrote was phenomenology. One of my undergraduate professors, Hillier Rudisil, defined phenomenology as the study of everything. Now, he didn't mean that as a technical definition. It's much more complicated than that. But an anecdote told by French philosopher Simone de Beauvoir illustrates what my professor meant. In her book, The Prime of Life, de Beauvoir describes how her on-again, off-again lover, philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, was first introduced to phenomenology. She tells of how it was their habit in the evenings in the late 1920s, early 1930s, to frequent bars in the Montparnasse district of Paris, indulging in their fondness for cocktails. At one bar in particular, the house specialty was an apricot cocktail. One evening, in 1932 to be precise, their friend, philosopher Raymond Aron, had just returned from a year studying in Berlin, where Edmund Husserl was teaching phenomenology to students who would go on to make names for themselves in the field, students like Martin Heidegger. Aron came back to Paris excited about this new way of doing philosophy, and while having apricot cocktails with Sartre and de Beauvoir, Aron says, "You see, my dear fellow, if you are a phenomenologist, you can talk about this cocktail and make philosophy out of it." De Beauvoir describes Sartre's reaction like this: Sartre turned pale with emotion. Here was just the thing he had been longing to achieve for years: to describe objects just as he saw and touched them and extract philosophy from the process. Now, it's important to note that phenomenology isn't a philosophy in and of itself. Aron and Sartre and Heidegger, for example, developed very divergent philosophies on the foundations of Husserl's phenomenology. Even their phenomenology is different, such that we can speak of a Husserlian phenomenology, a Heideggerian phenomenology, and so on. Unlike scholasticism or geometry, however, pure phenomenology isn't interested in proving the truth of a particular claim or establishing a normative philosophy. More than anything, it offers a story, a narrative about the world around us, our experience of that world, and the impact that experience has on us. In this sense, phenomenology is the study of everything. That is, the study of anything that can be called a phenomenon. That's what I will be offering on this channel: descriptions, stories, narratives of the world, the experience of many different kinds of phenomena. And to have a little fun with the first video and lacking the precise ingredients for an apricot cocktail, I've decided to conduct a demonstration using a beverage that I admittedly depend on and around which many of my favorite memories are centered: coffee. Specifically an instant coffee I just happen to have in the kitchen at the moment. Phenomenology is a descriptive and narrative manner of inquiry. I'll be describing the experience of encountering the coffee, the setting, the cup I'm using, the coffee's color, aroma, taste, and so on. The sensory and subjective experience. In classic phenomenology, the study of a simple experience, such as that of a cup of coffee, says something about how one's consciousness interacts with the world and how our senses, thoughts, and feelings construct our perception of phenomena. This was seen by Sartre as a means of grounding philosophy in lived experience, and from there to broader existential themes, rather than just from abstract thinking to abstract ideas. As phenomenology evolved in the writing of Heidegger and Sartre, it was developed into a lens for examining not only consciousness, but how we experience existence as we engage in the world with phenomena such as time, memory, and relationships with others. As I continue, I must admit that drinking coffee is a fairly important part of my day and has been present in some of my important life experiences and friendships. To begin with the description of the coffee, I'm drinking this black. There are a couple of reasons why. First, I want to experience the coffee itself, but also while I really enjoy lattes and flavored creams, at some point I got into the habit of drinking my coffee black more often than not. I'm drinking this out of a cup you see on your screen, which is the first mug that I had when I arrived in Hong Kong to do my master's degree 15 years ago. I'm using 3 grams of the instant coffee, which is just under 2 teaspoons, I think. I just made this cup and it's fairly scalding, so I'll try not to burn myself. Actually, I think it's cooled off a bit while I was talking, so I'm going to start. I actually could have made that stronger. The first impression of the aroma is that just under 2 teaspoons of coffee, it's not very strong. It doesn't have a super strong aroma. I really love the aroma of a rich coffee. I realize that's a hot take, but the experience of the aroma of coffee just makes me very happy. This has an aroma. If I were to leave it in here in the studio with the door closed, it would probably be noticeable throughout the room, but it's not as strong an aroma as a Nespresso or like sitting in a Starbucks. First taste. It's not acidic. It's not sour. By the way, I'll share a suggestion given to me by my sister. If you find coffee to be too sour, add a pinch of salt, and it makes a world of difference. Anyway, I actually could have made this stronger, and it's only just now that I noticed instructions on the label. It says to use 1 teaspoon per 6 fluid ounces of hot water or milk. I actually can't tell you how much water I poured. Either I poured too much water, or I would prefer using more of the instant coffee. 3 grams I thought would be strong. It's actually not that strong flavor-wise. When it first hits your tongue, it reminds me of a strong black tea more than a coffee. In other words, there's flavor there, but it's not very powerful. Then after that, it comes in stronger and it has a good black coffee flavor. I know from past experience, if I make it stronger with more spoonfuls of coffee, it gives me IHOP vibes, a flavor and aroma not unlike the coffee you get at IHOP. It's very Proustian how the flavor can remind me of a road trip about 10 years ago when we stopped at IHOP and I had the coffee with my pancakes. I think sometimes I prepare this a little stronger and it gives me that restaurant coffee impression, but right now it's not giving me that impression. You have to make it stronger to get that level of flavor. In terms of body, the texture, it's thin. Vietnamese coffee is very thick, velvety, but this is like diner coffee, a standard restaurant black coffee. As for aftertaste, there is an aftertaste. It's about as acidic as it is when you first drink it. It's not very bitter. There is some bitterness. If I keep talking and let my mouth dry out, the aftertaste will become more pronounced. Right now, I'm not getting any jitters. If I made it stronger, I would definitely get a caffeine rush, but right now I'm not feeling it. I have an odd relationship with coffee in that I can drink it in the morning and it wakes me up like you would want a coffee to do, or I can drink it late at night and I feel relaxed. I don't know why that is. Now, if you're curious for my review, I'd say this is a very decent budget instant coffee that gets the job done, but you might want to experiment with the dose needed for your desired strength, flavor, and aroma. But to return to phenomenology, phenomenological inquiry collects seemingly trivial details that allude to deeper significance for the individual. I'm having my coffee in the studio as I record. I'm drinking it from a mug that has important value for me. The flavor and aroma of coffee bring up memories for me. The details point to what Heidegger called Sorge in German, which is something like care or concern. For Heidegger, care is what is fundamental to the being of the self. Your memories, your traumas, the things you hate, the things you cherish, are what construct you as a human being, and these can be brought out by something like a cup of coffee. I mentioned Proust earlier. Proust's novel In Search of Lost Time is set in motion when the narrator experiences a powerful flood of memories from dipping a madeleine into a cup of tea. Taste and the smell triggered a vivid emotional retrieval of past memories, and I realized the taste and aroma of coffee have the same effect on me. I can't help but think of certain memories, the people in those memories, what I was doing. Was I studying? Was I coaching clients or doing pastoral care? The next question then would be to ask, why do I care about these things? What do they reveal about me and being me? Phenomenology brought to philosophy the idea that these things are worth examining because they reveal other things about us. Our cares and concerns and how important they are to our being will be discussed in the next video, which will be about anxiety. Also, I hope you'll come back for next Friday's premiere episode of the Accidental Phenomenologist podcast, the topic of which will be the Happy Valley Dream Survey, a mysterious, real-world, and internet phenomenon involving anonymous flyers soliciting reports of unusual dreams, reports which were followed by eerie texts and phone calls. I participated, and I'll share my experience with the enigmatic surveyor. Until then, that's it for Coffee as a Gateway to Phenomenology. If you enjoyed this exploration of everyday phenomenology, I'd love for you to do all of the usual YouTube stuff like comment, subscribe. This is a new channel, and those things help me to get noticed more by the YouTube algorithm so more people have an opportunity to discover not only my ramblings about coffee, but some of the interesting topics I have planned, from dreams to ghosts to travel and much more. And if, on topic, you'd like to buy me a cup of coffee, there's a link in the description box. Until next time, thanks for joining me, and welcome to the Accidental Phenomenologist.